All right, I am here to talk about another cameo for use with Shang Tsung. Today's cameo is Cyrax. We are going to talk about his moves, what they do in general, and particularly what they do for Shang Tsung. And then we are going to go over what I think of him as a cameo pick for Shang Tsung overall. So, we are going to begin with Shang, or Cyrax's least useful move, which is self-destruct. So, self-destruct is his forward cameo, like that, or his down cameo, like that. Now, this move, no matter which one you choose, can be delayed. So if you hold the cameo button, here's what happens. You can see the meter running out, and then when it finally runs out, he will explode. Now, as you can plainly see, this move launches people. So you can get a combo. You can get like a whole route of skull loops after hitting with this move. And because Shang can move around for a lot of the time that Cyrax is on the screen, we can set up a bunch of weird delayed scenarios where we try to make a situation for our opponent where it's very difficult for them to react to. And we could even do something like put out the bomb and then throw them and they get hit with Cyrax and kind of make an unblockable setup there. So we go like that. Now you might even be able to stand up fast enough to combo off of that. But one of the worst parts about Cyrax's bomb is that no matter which distance you choose, it can hit you. It does less damage to you than it does to your opponent. As you can see, it did 20 to me. It does 60 to my opponent. But it does launch me. It does not give it as good of a launch against me as it does against my opponent, but it is still a launch, and opponents can still combo from it if they know what they're doing. So you can't just set up this bomb and then move in for block pressure, because you'll end up getting blown up. You need to come up with something a little more clever than that. It is also the case that this bomb has Cyrax sitting out in front of you for a while, so your opponent can just shoot Cyrax, basically. You have Cyrax out here, opponent hits Cyrax. They can hit him in any which way that they could normally hit anybody, so he is nice and vulnerable when he's right there, which can sometimes rob you of your cameo for a little bit if you do your setup poorly. Now, this move has a kind of slow cameo recharge, so that is yet another issue with the move. But when you do the down version of self-destruct, when it says behind right there, it actually comes from behind your opponent and goes out in front of him. Whereas if you do the normal one, it comes out in front behind Shang and does it in front of him. So at full screen, you can actually still do Cyrax setups by calling them out like that. And then, you know, you could sit here and zone your opponent, and if they try to zone back, they'll hit Cyrax and you won't take the damage. In fact, you'll take less than chip damage. And if they try to move forward, they might get blown up by Cyrax or hit by your zoning. So there is some clever play here, for Shang in particular, that has some potential, and because you can delay it, you can have your opponent reacting to stuff that's not happening, or trying to throw kicks out at Cyrax while you have Ground Skull available, like you're going like this, and then they try to kick Cyrax, and we hit them with our Ground Skull. So this can also be used to try and negate projectile immune moves. So if we did something like this, we could go like that, and then bring Cyrax out, and you see he just hits Cyrax, and we could keep shooting. Unfortunately, this is a summon, so Shang has to use it as if it was a special move. And Cyrax, so Shang is going to be doing something for a while Cyrax comes out. And he won't be able to move and just freely shoot skulls or whatever it is you would like to do as Cyrax is coming out. You have to wait for him to fully deploy and then do other stuff. So there are some checkmate scenarios this can make. If you have your opponent in the corner, you can go summon Cyrax, then go for a throw. So if you have knockdown, that is, in the corner, you could summon Cyrax, go for a throw, and then if they neutral crouch the throw, they get blown up by Cyrax, and if they get caught by the throw, then Cyrax blows up and hits them anyway. So you have a situation like this, where you can even set it up if you time it properly, so that you you get the bomb to blow up without hitting Shang, like that. So there are some ways to get decent setups off of it with Shang, but it is a little bit finicky, and it's something you're going to have to practice a lot if you plan to play Cyrax. And this can lead to checkmates, like I said, where your opponent has no choice but to get hit by something. And I think about the minimum damage for that comes out to something like 80. So it can definitely just get free kills if somebody's very low health in the corner. So this move also has a ton of advantage if it's blocked, because it is as you can see, because Shang can move around like that whole time, if they block it, we just have basically infinite advantage. But this does not mean we can just deploy it, because it takes so long to fire that we can't just use it to make block strings freely. And that is about all there is to be said for self-destruct. It's an okay move, but far from amazing. And you're going to find niche uses for it, but it's something you're going to have to spend a lot of time labbing and learning to play against particular characters if you want it to be really good. Next up, we are going to talk about his Cybernet. His Cybernet is also a summon. It is a mid that comes out in 40 frames, but it is a projectile. So that goes full screen. And as you can see, it has a pretty average Kameo recovery. It's nothing to write home about, but it's nothing to complain about a ton either. And when it hits, it's pretty amazing. As you can see, our opponent is locked in for a really long time. We can do anything we want if this hits. And as long as your opponent doesn't use a crushing projectile, this will trade favorably with projectiles, because you can come up here and do a full combo. And as you can see, the net is actually leaving your opponent in whatever state they were in when the net caught them. So it can leave them standing, or it could leave them in the air. There are air routes for this with Shang. If you know what to do, you use EX skulls. And then you do that, and you can catch him on the way down. I did it poorly there, but it is doable. So, Shang is actually one of the few characters that can combo into the net, just like that. But you see, if I hit my opponent, he's still airborne, and he gets affected by all the gravity scaling right after I hit him, so you do need to keep that in mind when you grab him. The other thing you may have noticed about the net is that it drains meter. As you can see, Liu Kang's meter is going down. It drains one full bar before your opponent breaks out of it. So this is how you can gauge how long is left in the net, and you should always let the maximum time pass before you hit your opponent so that you can get the full meter drain and make this a resource positive move all the time, because 1 bar of Kameo is worth a lot less than 1 bar of meter. So there are no ways for Shang to combo into this other than from EX skulls. But it does trade well with projectiles. Unfortunately, it's so slow that many projectiles will just hit Cyrax before he shoots the net, kind of depending on the range that they're fired at. So if we come down here and we say we're going to fire Cosmic Flame, then we do this. As you can see, Cyrax didn't even get his net out and got hit. Now, if he gets hit, we take less than chip damage for that, so it's not a huge deal, but we do lose our Kameo for a while, and that's not a great deal for us. And if somebody does something like a crushing projectile after the net fires, we'd be in a really bad position where we would probably get hit, and our opponent would not even get caught by the net. Another thing to know about this move is that it is plus on block at every range. So if you did this, +1. If you're just in a normal string, +1. And if you go all the way back full screen, we get +28. Which means that if they block the net, they are jailed into the ground skull. So that is a cool piece of zoning enhancement for it. Even though it's very slow, if your opponent respects it, you have them in a great position, even if they block. It is also a really good anti-air. Opponents who try to jump this net almost always get caught by it. As you can see, that area that the net looks like it covers is basically what you get, maybe even a little more up top. And because it's a mid, you can't just crouch it. So they really have no choice once it's out but to block it. And if they don't block it, that's even better for us. And, of course, because it holds your opponent for so long, it gives us access to Form Stealer combos. Shang's big saucy feature. And because it leaves your opponent standing, it is a great option for doing whatever kind of combo you want. And because it's draining their bar, you'll often find that you end up about resource even on your Form Steal combos, and they won't be able to break the combos, which means that you're going to get a lot of damage out of your EX Form Steal with this enhancement to the damage. See, that's what it normally does. Shang normally does 20. If we EX, Liu Kang does 24. If we don't EX, Liu Kang does 20. So, this can be a powerful tool against opponents who try to compete with us in zoning but are worse at it, or people who we really like to Form Steal because we could catch them off the EX skulls and then Form Steal them and keep a combo going. And with their own special, get the Oki that we want. So, it is also his invincible Wake Up for Cyrax. But unfortunately, it is a pretty bad invincible Wake Up. That is what our opponent will do to us to give us a meaty. And we will see exactly what happens. As you can see, Liu Kang's second hit of his meaty, which is actually very slow compared to most second hits from meaties, will knock Shang right out of this. Basically everybody in the game gets a clean punish if you try this. Don't try it. It's a really bad invincible wake up. If your opponent does block, however, if for some reason you catch them respecting this move, which they never should, you're actually going to be in a great position, because unlike most invincible wake-ups, this move remains plus on block if it's used as a wake-up or reversal. So, that is something to know, but probably not use a ton. You could use it in like a projectile game if your opponent has you really far away, and then they're going to try to zone you on wake-up. You could wake up net and get a good trade, and it wouldn't even be a trade. You just have it, you'd be invincible. You wouldn't take the projectile, and then they would get hit by net, and even if they blocked, you'd be plus and able to do basically whatever you want. So there is a niche use case for this, even though it is bad up close, which is where most people are going to try to keep you on Oki, because Shang is usually better at a distance than his opponent. Now, the final cameo move that I think everybody knows well, especially if they played day one or, in the first month of this game, is Copter Chopper. It is his neutral cameo. As you can see, it is an ambush, and it does not hit standing opponents. This only hits people while they are in the air. So, we did this. You can catch him. Follow up, do whatever we want. It juggles people for combos for a nice long time, and gets a lot of hits and damage. It also just doesn't have horrendous scaling, although it does make gravity scaling pretty brutal. So, it's something that in theory can be used to continue combos for Shang, but Shang is already doing pretty good damage without it and already has gravity scaling issues without it, so it's not something you're probably going to use a ton. Although perhaps there are routes I haven't thought of to make it much better. it's probably possible to do something like throw your opponent way far away and then use with the copter chopper, because if your opponent has been hit enough, they will kind of get chucked away, and then use ground skulls to continue as they get chucked away. So you might be able to find some routes that are a little bit better than just doing all ground skull combos that can't be broken. You might be able to get a little more damage out of it. It also facilitates throw combos for most of the roster, but not for Shang. When you do this and try to call Copter Chopper, it whiffs no matter what timing you have. So, you know, get ready to wish you had throw combos that it looks like you should have. I cannot find a timing. I've tried just about everything I can think of for timings on this move. I'm pretty certain you cannot get a throw combo from Shang's throw. However, you can get a combo from almost the entire cast's throw, which means that when you form steal people, you will be getting throw combos with Cyrax using Copter Chopper. And it also gives you enough time for a form stealer combo. So you can do something like this, where you would turn into your opponent, and you would have plenty of time to get a hit in. But you would need, of course, to memorize your routes. For each character, you're going to need to come up with a route that's specific to this exact plan for everyone. But it's a good, cheap way to form steal single bar. And this move also would anti-air if it was catching people, but it is far too slow to be actually used as an anti-air. You have on 40 frames startup on this move. So once you see your opponent jumping and then activate this, like, yeah, there's just no way that you're actually anti-airing people. Just stick with standing 4 or bed of spikes or whatever it is you like to normally do for anti-airs, maybe even standing 2 or 1 maybe. But most choices are better than trying to use Copter Chopper as an anti-air, even though it looks like it should do that job. And indeed, if it hit, you would get a full combo, which is cool. Now, the other version of this is if you hold the Kameo meter, you get the horizontal version, which, as you can see, does in fact hit grounded opponents. But it costs your entire Kameo meter, as you can see up in the corner, which means that Cyrax is not very available after this one. Now, much like its upward counterpart, it can be used to juggle people. Like that. But it can also be used to create block pressure. So, something that Shang struggles with normally can kind of be shored up here by doing something like that and then coming in for more swings. And you'll be crazy plus unblocked. You'll do a lot of chip damage. And as long as the first hit of Copter Chopper connects before your last hit of whatever move you're doing at the end of your block string connects, then you'll be fine, and your opponent will be forced to block all of these, even though they're highs. If they stop blocking, they'll get hit. And if they get hit, it will mean combo time. So that is a powerful move. Unfortunately, it costs your entire Kameo meter, which basically makes it useless. Or at least makes it such a limited use that it doesn't really mean that our character has block pressure. It just means that if we're really desperate for it, we can do it. If we have our opponent in the corner and we're about to chip them to death, we can really make a good attempt at chipping them to death. And the last thing I want to talk about for Cyrax is his throw. He has an exceptional throw. Here's the base version. That is 100 damage, which is lower than any other throw in the game, actually. But it leaves our opponent full screen with +9 hit advantage. So it's time to zone. That's great. We love this. This is exactly what Shang wants. But that is not all this throw does. If you use the enhance button to enhance the throw, you get a launcher. It costs 2 bars, as you can see. And it is great. We can get good damage off of it. And it's not mind-blowing or anything. But if we want to seal up a win and we have the bar, there is no reason not to spend it to make this happen. And more options is always better. So, from my estimation, you can get about 240 damage off of what I could find, which was very preliminary. I did not do a ton of experimenting with this. But if you use forward 4 into ground skulls, you can end up with 40 damage very simply. 240 damage simply, rather. And that's definitely good, even if we won't use it frequently because of how expensive it is. Which leads me right into my overall thoughts about Cyrax. Basically, I think he would be pretty good, except for everything that is good about him is so expensive to use that we're never going to use it, or if we are, we're going to use it so infrequently that it isn't as available as we want it to be, and one of the best things that a cameo can be is available. So overall, I would rate him as an okay cameo, but not a great one. He gives us block pressure and chip damage, but it is expensive and therefore not reliable. He gives us throw combos, which are cool, but again, not the way we would like. They're too expensive. And he gives us a decent addition to our zoning. He does the net is a tool in zoning that actually matters. It matters more than it seems like it does. And taking meter from people is a great positive resource management tool, but it is not good enough to just pick a move. I think we all know that because of how the Serena cameo plays out for Shang, which is that she's not very good, even though she has a way to take meter, and take it more effectively than Cyrax, in fact. Now, Form Steal is very open with this cameo. You can basically just call Copter Chopper and Form Steal whenever you want, and if you grab somebody with a net, you can Form Steal whenever you want, and end up actually resource neutral on it, in addition to doing a ton of damage and them not having Breaker. So that's an interesting idea and could be an interesting way to play Shang, is basically like try to be resource positive all the time and not let your opponent have Breaker. Shang is already kind of good at this because you cannot break ground skulls, so his main combo tool is actually an unbreakable move, and if you don't ever use the kicks to loop them, you can just have ground skulls hit them and they will never be able to break, and if Cyrax net hits in there, they won't be able to break that either because it drains meter. So you also don't have an amazing answer to crushing projectiles. Putting the Cyrax bomb in front of your opponent is an answer, but because Shang has to stop firing projectiles in order to do it, it's not a very good one. You basically have to make the read that your opponent is going to use a crushing projectile in order for it to be a good play. It's a tolerable play if your opponent just hits them with a regular projectile. And if your opponent delays and like tries to sweep the cameo or something, then it's a great play because you'll hit with Ground Skull as they're doing that and get a full combo. But you kind of rely on your opponent to not play super well in order for this to work, or you're doing crazy reads that I think will often backfire. But it does kind of create a wall that your opponent has to deal with before they move up anyway, so in that way it's kind of good either way. It also has no real answer to projectile immune moves, so we can get our bomb in people's faces, but we have a whole other problem once we do that, which is that at range, that's where the bomb lands. Right here, you can see we're in an okay spot. The bomb counts as a projectile. So, we just don't have an answer. We could try to use Copter Chopper. At ranges like this, we could try to use, like, the horizontal one to knock somebody out of their ice armor. Go like that. And then say, maybe we'll catch you. But again, we're relying on our opponent walking into that. They can just crouch it at the range that is useful. Our opponent has already kind of closed the gap, and we could have probably just done forward 3 as old Shang to try to do this. We probably just have better things to do at this distance. Less risky things to do anyway. And basically, he's just not a great pick because of his limited uses. If his Copter Chopper horizontal was only 1 bar, like it was when the game released, I think he'd be a good pick. And if I could get a throw combo off of Shang's throw with Copter Chopper, that would make him a much better pick. As it stands, he's just too resource intensive, and I don't recommend playing him. He also doesn't really enforce our straight skulls, because even though net is a mid, it is so slow that any opponent can just crouch our skulls and then wait to see the net. They don't need to understand that they need to block the skulls and Kano, right? Like something like Kano or Striker that's going to force them to block a lot of skulls they don't want to block. This isn't going to do that. This is just going to force them to block net and then deal with the ground skull that's coming right after it, which is not complicated to do, even if people mess it up all the time. If they know what to do, it's a knowledge check that has very little risk. So if they know what to do, they're going to succeed, and you're not going to have great zoning. And if they don't know what to do, they're going to get hit every time and lose almost instantly. So, those are my thoughts about Cyrax. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, a comment, a subscribe, and go and follow my Twitch and join my Discord. So, I'll see you in the next one.